A pregnant woman goes to the hospital for a checkup and runs into her husband with his mistress there for her checkup. I tremble all over. From the time I got pregnant, you've never accompanied me. Turns out you've been with someone else? His mistress points at me. Richard, didn't you say your wife was dead? Then why is she here? Richard chases after his mistress who's run off, and I stand there like a joke, watched by everyone. Not long after, I have a premature birth and die on the delivery bed due to severe bleeding. When I wake up again, I've been reborn to the day Richard loved me the most. Emily, will you be my girlfriend? Emily, I like you. I'll only ever love you. Richard is standing outside the girls' dormitory, holding a bouquet of roses and shouting upstairs. A crowd surrounds him, cheering him on. The noise outside gets louder, making it seem like they wouldn't stop until I come out. Annoyed, I open my eyes and pull the quilt over my ears. Emily, don't you like Richard too? What a great opportunity, why aren't you going down? I look at the familiar face in front of me. She's my roommate, Winnie, who would later become Richard's mistress. Right, I've been reborn back to when I was 18. At this time, Richard and I were deeply in love. I meet Winnie's gaze, which is staring right at me, and a smile slowly spreads across my lips. I didn't understand before, now looking at Winnie's eyes, I can see the traces of jealousy. Alright, I'll get dressed and go down soon. I deliberately take a long time getting ready, changing dresses, putting on makeup, and styling my hair. Emily, if you don't hurry, it'll be curfew time soon. Winnie keeps urging beside me. Even though she's pretending to be envious, there's a hint of jealousy in her tone. I leisurely straighten my dress, get up, and walk out, not sparing her a glance. When I get downstairs, Richard's dorm buddies all greet me. I ignore them, heading straight for Richard, who's standing in the center. Colorful heart-shaped lights on the ground reflect off my feet. And in Richard's eyes ahead, only my figure is mirrored. Emily, will you be my girlfriend? Richard looks at me without blinking, his eyes burning. The shouts and cheers from the crowd never stop. Say yes. Say yes. I lower my head, hiding the turmoil in my eyes, and in a voice only audible to the two of us, I say, I agree. Hearing this, Richard's eyes reveal uncontrollable joy. He wraps his arm around my waist, lowering his head to kiss me. I stand on my toes first, planting a swift kiss on his cheek. He's stunned for a moment, then smiles. Emily, you're so beautiful. I pretend to shyly lean against his chest, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a tall, thin boy standing at the back, quietly watching. It's John, one of Richard's roommates. The difference is, John never mingles with Richard and the others. He's very handsome, but no one dares to get close to him. They say he's the son of a murderer, and everyone fears him. In my impression, he's always been a lone wolf. Yet it was this person who, after Richard confessed to me, came to me alone and told me Richard had a performing personality and that I shouldn't take it too seriously. I remember scoffing at him and mocking him. Do you like me? Is that why you're bad-mouthing Richard? Let me tell you, even if I didn't like Richard, I'd never like you. On my wedding day with Richard, I heard he went abroad and never returned. Emily, what are you looking at? I quickly turn my gaze to Richard. Nothing, it's getting late. I should head back to the dorm. I'll walk you back. No need, it's just up ahead. I walk to the dorm entrance, dragging my feet. Just as I'm about to step inside, a calm, cold voice stops me. Emily, wait a moment. I stop and turn around, feigning confusion. What's up? He stands under the streetlight, the dim light softening his sharp demeanor. Richard is good at pretending he may not be as good as you think. Being with him, don't believe him completely. After saying that, he turns to leave. I got it, thank you. I shout after him. He pauses for a moment, then continues to walk away. In my last life, I never got to say this thank you. Now I've fulfilled my wish. As for Richard, I'll make him pay. When we were together, love was trivial, mostly about the money. He was the poorest student in our class, and I was an only child. My dad's company wasn't in the top 500 in the nation, but I was one of the wealthiest in our class. Ridiculously, not only did Richard spend my money, but he also used it to support his mistress. A mocking smile curls on my lips. I calm my agitated heart and walk into the dormitory. Every day, I send gifts to Richard. Limited edition AJ shoes, branded clothes, expensive electronics, and all sorts of bouquets, hand-wrapped ginkgo bouquets, candy bouquets, and rose bouquets. There were even bouquets wrapped in bundles of cash. Of course, I didn't wrap these myself. I just picked a random online shop and had them delivered by a food delivery service, beautifully and timely. Whenever I met Richard, I would tearfully extend my hands and complain, "My hands are going to be ruined from wrapping these." He would hold my hands, his tone slightly scolding but mostly tender. "I told you there's no need to send so many. Don't do it next time. It makes my heart ache." I looked at the joy in his eyes and felt like puking. I was throwing more and more money at Richard, taking him to all sorts of high-end places and splurging big time. Rumors spread around the school. Some said Richard was involved with a rich older woman, others called me his ATM. Recently, Richard got a lot of anonymous complaints about his high spending habits. His teachers revoked his financial aid for poor students. Now, I'm his only ATM left. In about a month, Richard's family is going to face a big emergency. I started transferring him money every now and then, amounts ranging from a few thousand to tens of thousands. I only transferred whole numbers and did it only if there wasn't a specific holiday. Richard said, "Baby, no, you can't, I don't want it." But later he'd go, "Honey, what's yours is mine. Let me keep the money safe for you." I just smiled and replied with a simple sure. Winnie wasn't around the dorm much lately. I had casually mentioned a few places Richard often went to in front of her. Before long, people said they saw her and Richard getting close and even spotted them entering a hotel near the school together. "Emily, they're slandering me. I've never been to that hotel," Richard said, looking indignant and upset. I pretended to be angry. "How can they say that? It's so unfair." Richard looked at me tenderly. "Emily, you're the best. You're my boyfriend. I'm always on your side." I paused, looked into his eyes, and asked slowly, "Richard, you'll always love me, right?" "Of course, silly. As long as you don't break up with me, we'll never split." I smiled, not missing the fleeting guilt in his eyes. Soon, I had the evidence in my hands. A boy with clearly defined joints handed me a stack of photos, all showing Richard and Winnie getting intimate. Saw them that day, so I snapped some pics. "Don't be too sad, the most important thing is to cut your losses." Was the hotel visit also just on the way? He hesitated, his Adam's apple bobbing, and finally mumbled a yeah. I noticed his ears turning slightly red and his uneasy gaze. "John, do you like me?" In both my past life and this one, no matter when I looked back, there was always him in the crowd. John lowered his head, speaking softly, "Yes, I do. I like you." "Why?" "You know I'm not interested in you." "There's no why. Liking you is my own thing. Whether you like me back, it doesn't matter." With that, he pulled up the hood of his black hoodie and ran off. Watching him go, for the first time, I felt a bit hesitant about what I was going to do. I turned around and posted the photos anonymously on the school forum. In no time, the post went viral. Richard's reputation plummeted as stories about him having a girlfriend and going to a hotel with her roommates spread across the school. He was despised and scorned by everyone. Richard would be looking for me soon. I deliberately sat alone on the rooftop where we often hung out and applied eye drops to bring on the tears. Soon, tears flowed uncontrollably. I hugged my knees, crying my heart out. Suddenly, someone handed me a tissue. "Get lost. Who asked you to come here?" I buried my head into my knees, crying louder. "Do you really like him that much?" A familiar voice rang out. I froze, looked up in disbelief. "John, it's you? If it's not me, are you still waiting for him?" His fists clenched, crumpling the tissue paper. I'd never seen him this angry. I panicked and scooted back. "What are you afraid of?" He crouched down, gripping my waist to stop me from moving back. I straightened up, too scared to move. I'm scared you'll hit me. He muttered a curse and roughly wiped my tears with the tissue. Damn, my hard-earned tears. No more crying, he demanded sternly. With red eyes, I looked at him and weakly said, if you leave, I'll stop crying. Richard would arrive any moment now. If he saw me with John, my long-laid plans would be ruined. John started to speak, then stopped, glaring at me before storming off. Not long after, Richard found me. I quickly pinched my thigh, making more tears flow. Emily, I knew you'd be here, he said urgently. Believe me, everything in that post is fake. I covered my ears. Go away, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything. He hugged me tightly, constantly explaining, Emily, that's not me in those pictures. The guy only looks a bit like me. I would never betray you. Really? I looked at him, my face full of sincerity, though I felt nothing but disgust inside. His eyes showed even more guilt as he nodded hesitantly, of course. I hugged him back, smiling through my tears. Richard, betraying true feelings means swallowing 1,000 needles. I believe you. From an angle he couldn't see, I smirked with pure sarcasm. Back at the dorm, I found Winnie trying on dresses repeatedly. Seeing me, she pretended to care. Emily, are you okay? Don't believe that post. It's my boyfriend in the pictures, not yours. They just look alike. I smiled and replied, Winnie, don't worry. I'm fine. I believe my boyfriend. That's good. I'm going out on a date then. Okay. But this time, Winnie came back just shortly after she left. Oh, is she already having a fight with her boyfriend? Valentine's Day was coming up soon. Unexpectedly, Richard sent me a good sum of money with a note. Baby, I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. For someone as stingy as Richard, this was a significant amount. He really went all out. I accepted the money and sent back a heart emoji. That evening, after having dinner with Richard, he said his professor had called him for something, so he had to leave. Emily, I'll make it up to you for Valentine's Day tomorrow, okay? I responded understandingly, sure, no problem. You can go. About an hour later, I saw a tweet from Winnie. It was a selfie with part of someone's shirt in the picture. I recognized the shirt immediately. It was the one Richard wore today, the one I bought him from a high-end brand last month. Winnie's caption read, Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, even though someone doesn't want to take a photo with me. The location was a popular starry sky spot that Richard had taken me to before. I smiled slightly and took a cab there. Under a tree decorated with colorful neon lights, I saw Richard and Winnie. Finding the best angle, I took out my phone and started recording. Richard, did you make sure she didn't suspect anything when you left? Relax. Every time I meet you, she has no idea. Winnie leaned into him with a smile. Yeah, she trusts you so much. It's so easy to fool someone so rich and clueless. Richard frowned at this. I wouldn't put it like that. After all, the money is hers. Are you upset about what I said? She looked at him incredulously. She's always acting high and mighty, like giving us her leftovers. We're the ones who understand each other. With that, she stood on her toes and kissed him. Richard didn't pull away. I stopped recording, adjusted my emotions, and walked out. Richard? Winnie? Is that you too? I feigned shock at seeing them kissing. Hearing my voice, Richard quickly pushed Winnie away and took a few steps back. Emily, no, it's not what you think, let me explain. Before he could finish, I ran off. What I didn't expect was him following me. This was a complete surprise. Last time, he abandoned me and chased after her. This time, it was the opposite. Panic set in as he got closer. Desperate, I ran into a random restaurant. Suddenly, an arm pulled me into the restroom and pinned me against the wall. I almost screamed, but a warm hand covered my mouth. John looked down at me and made a gesture. Don't make a sound. My heart raced as I nodded. In the cramped space, his youthful scent filled the air. My cheeks grew warm, and he awkwardly looked elsewhere. After what felt like ages, when the noises outside ceased, he let me go. Thank you. Maybe staying in one position for too long, I stammered. He raised an eyebrow and teased, I don't need a verbal thank you. How about I take you out to eat next time? You've helped me a few times now. Why wait? Let's go today. But I've already eaten. I haven't. On my way back, I ran into Richard at the dorm entrance. He was waiting by the door, looking like he'd been there for a while. It seemed I couldn't avoid this anymore. It's just as well, I had no more reason to keep pretending. When he saw me, he quickly walked over. Emily, why are you so late? It's not safe for a girl to be out alone this late. I looked at him impatiently. Richard, after everything, can you really pretend nothing happened? I'm tired. Let's break up. He panicked. No, we can't break up. I've already dumped Winnie. I promise it won't happen again. Ignoring his plea, I coldly said, during our time together, including the money I transferred, you owe me about 200,000. I'll list it all out for you. Pay me back as soon as you can. What? His eyes widened in disbelief. Emily, how can you do this? I couldn't be bothered to argue and walked off without looking back. When I got to the dorm, Winnie was taking off her makeup. Back already? She sneered. Richard looked everywhere for you, waiting for hours downstairs. Happy now? So what? He chose me over you. Are you jealous? I taunted her, enjoying the moment. You? What? Am I wrong? What difference does it make? Richard never touched you. He's only after your money. A loud slap echoed through the room as I grabbed her hair and slapped her hard. Winnie, stealing my makeup and spending my money is one thing, but disrespecting me? How did you know? Every time she did her makeup, my products would empty out, especially the high-end stuff I hadn't used much. At first, I didn't notice, but it became too obvious. I pulled her hair back, forcing her to look at me. My manicured nails grazed her reddened cheek, making her shiver. I smiled. Next time, don't be so arrogant in front of me. Stay away from me. Don't touch my stuff. Or I'll leave scars on that pretty face of yours. She opened her eyes wide, looking at me in horror and reluctance. I pushed her away and clapped off the disgust. That night, I posted again, but this time without anonymity. I'm Emily. Everyone, please avoid my ex-boyfriend Richard. Tonight, I found out he betrayed me. While dating me, he was also kissing and dating my roommate. I attached a video from tonight. Not only did he deceive me emotionally, but he also tricked me out of a lot of money during our relationship. I've reported this to the police and will continue until he pays me back every cent. Attached were the transfer records. I hope everyone can be vigilant and find someone who genuinely cares for them. Once the post was up, many people shared and commented on it. Richard? Isn't he the same jerk who was exposed for cheating before? Boyfriend and roommate? How nasty. Using his girlfriend's money to support a mistress. As things escalated, Winnie posted a picture in the comments. Look everyone, this is her hitting me. It's pure bullying. Soon, helpful netizens clapped back. You seduced her boyfriend, what do you expect? You deserve it. This? Bullying? You don't even know what real bullying is. Come here, I'll show you. Seeing how the comments were turning, I closed my phone, feeling satisfied. Everything was going according to my plan. Richard called me non-stop every day, and after I blocked him, he started to corner me all over school. This time, it was in the middle of the schoolyard in broad daylight. Emily, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me? He blocked my way, pleading. I planned to ignore him like before and walk away, but this time he grabbed my wrist. I made a mistake. I've already spent almost all of the 200,000. I can't pay it back. You can't pay it back? I sneered, meeting his pleading eyes. Richard, when you spent my money on your mistress, Did you think about whether you could afford it? No, no. I only love you, truly. Let go. Seeing you makes me sick. I struggled, but he clenched tighter, eyes full of desperation. Sick. You hate me that much now? Fine, don't blame me for being unkind. Shouldn't you return the money I sent you on Valentine's Day? I laughed coldly. 520. That's nothing compared to the 200,000 I gave you. One last time, let go. Emily, I'm begging you. I really don't have that kind of money. He kneeled, eyes red, voice choked. I don't have that much. My dad was recently diagnosed with liver cancer, and we've spent all our savings. There's no way my family can come up with that much money. That's not my problem, Richard. Let go of me. My wrist was already red from his grip, and I couldn't break free. Onlookers gathered, whispering among themselves. She said let go, didn't you hear? A familiar voice sounded behind me. It was cold, but somehow comforting. Why are you here? Stay out of this, it's between us. Before Richard could finish, he was kicked and fell onto the ground. John looked down at him, saying casually, I just got involved. What are you gonna do about it? You, just like the murderer's son, always meddling. Maybe that's how your dad got locked up back then. Richard. Get lost, now. I stood in front of John, pointing at him angrily. John was great, he shouldn't be insulted because of me. Emily, you too, fine. I've been a fool in love. I'm leaving now. Richard said, backing away in embarrassment. Once he was gone, I turned around and met John's intense gaze. He was staring at me straightforwardly, without hiding his feelings. I coughed lightly, my cheeks warming up. John, don't take what he said to heart. It's fine, I'm used to it. He said indifferently, his eyes shifting to my red wrist. I hurriedly hid my hand behind my back, avoiding his gaze. What they say doesn't matter. In my eyes, you're you, independent of anyone else. Give me your hand. I looked at him, puzzled. Talking about this, now he wants my hand? The next moment, he grabbed my hand and examined it closely. It's red. Does it hurt? I shook my head. It looks worse than it feels. My skin bruises easily, a small bump can leave a visible mark, even if it doesn't hurt. Really, it's fine. It doesn't hurt at all. We were on the playground, and there were still lots of people around. I felt embarrassed and pulled my hand back quickly. I need to get some medicine. Come with me to the nurse's office. Are you sick? Is it serious? I asked quickly. He ignored me, walking ahead. I followed him to the nurse's office. The nurse was busy with many patients. When she saw John, her eyes lit up, then glanced at me and teased, brought your girlfriend, huh? I'm busy, here's the ointment. You help her apply it. I poked John from behind, signaling him to clear up the misunderstanding, but he didn't react at all. He took the ointment and led me to sit down. Give me your hand. This time, I obediently handed it over. John bent down, carefully applying the ointment. The cool gel felt soothing against his warm fingers. He was gentle, constantly asking if it hurt, adjusting his pressure. What should have taken a few minutes stretched to 10 or more. All done. Apply it once daily for a few days. I nodded, pulling my hand back. He paused, then continued, I come to the nurse's office a lot. She knows me well. Don't mind her comment earlier. Realizing he referred to the girlfriend comment, I whispered, okay. He suddenly reached out, his hand hesitating halfway. I watched in confusion as his hand slowly lowered and gently ruffled my hair. Come on, I'll take you back. But didn't you still need to buy medicine? He stopped, bent over, and looked me straight in the eyes. You're buying it for me. When we went out, it was already raining. The light drizzle seemed like it would last for a while. Looks like it won't stop anytime soon. Come here. He gestured for me to come over. I walked slowly towards him. John put his coat over my head and shielded me as we ran to the nearest bulletin board shelter. Your clothes are all wet. I touched my head and took off the wet coat. It's gonna get washed anyway, no big deal. I'll take it back and wash it for you, and return it tomorrow. After all, the coat shielded me from the rain. He patted my head and, seeing I wasn't soaked, smiled. All right, whatever you say. I looked up at him. Water droplets ran from his hair down to his chin and disappeared into his white t-shirt. He smiled, his Adam's apple moving, looking like an especially enticing fruit. Moved by curiosity, I reached out and poked it. As soon as I touched it, my hand was caught by his big hand. John stared at me, his voice hoarse, different from before. Emily, never heard you're not supposed to touch a guy's Adam's apple? I looked at his burning gaze and, in a daze, asked, what happens if you touch it? He didn't answer. The next second, he tightened his grip on my hand and leaned in to kiss me. So, this is what happens? My mind went blank, all my thoughts crashing, as I stared at him from up close. A stone seemed to drop into my once still heart, sending ripples outwards. In this moment, my heart raced like crazy. Close your eyes. His voice was even huskier. I don't know how much time passed until I heard Richard's angry roar next to my ear. What are you two doing? John pulled me behind him, and I peeked out nervously. Richard didn't have an umbrella and stood in the rain, his eyes blazing as he looked at me and John. John, really? How dare you? Furious, he swung his fist at John. Richard, we already broke up. Who I'm with now has nothing to do with you. I held John's hand, pulling him back, signaling him not to get impulsive. Break up? But I've always loved you the most. Richard pointed at me. Emily, come here. John turned to me. I shook my head, refusing. He gripped my hand tightly, facing Richard. She won't go with you. This is my last warning, don't harass her again. Richard's eyes were filled with malice. Emily, you're really heartless. You believed in me and loved me so much before, now you've just fallen for someone else. You're so cheap. You just... Oh. Before he could finish, John had already punched him, and they were instantly entangled in a fight. I stood there, anxious, too scared to intervene. They fought fiercely, especially John, and in no time, Richard's face was bruised. John. Stop, John, if this keeps up, someone will die. Seeing Richard seemingly unable to resist and close to losing consciousness, I rushed up, hugging John from behind tightly, stopping any of his movements. Stop it, stop it. The ground was bloody, I was so scared my voice started trembling. John finally stopped and, turning to hold me, said, Emily, it's all right. Don't be afraid, I'm here. When the ambulance arrived, Richard was unconscious. John was also injured, but compared to Richard, his wounds were minor. Richard was taken away. No matter what I said, John refused to go to the hospital. I cried out of frustration, demanding he must go with me for a checkup. He gently wiped away my tears, hugging me. Emily, don't cry, I'll go. At the hospital, I found out John had severe bipolar disorder. The way he fought was due to being triggered by Richard's words. His injuries weren't serious, just minor ones needing good care. I'm sorry, Emily, for scaring you earlier. John looked at me guiltily. My face was still tear-streaked as I sat sobbing beside him. You're not allowed to fight anymore. I won't allow it. He chuckled softly, pulling me into a hug. All right. When John was discharged, I heard Richard had sold a kidney for money. He even forcibly took back money he'd spent on Winnie. As we left the hospital, Richard caught up with us. Emily, wait. I turned to see him, bandaged, clutching his abdomen, limping. His hair was messy, stubble unkempt, eyes hollow and bloodshot, looking a mess. I frowned. What is it? He handed over a bank card. This is for you, the money I owed is in there. Lowering his head, his voice choked with emotion. I've thought through everything. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Now that the debt is paid, we're leaving. I didn't have the patience to hear more and, holding John's hand, walked away. Belated love is worth less than weeds, and late apologies even less. John's place was in a row of townhouses. I didn't realize his place was in the same neighborhood as mine. The house was simple, clean, and spacious, showing few occupants. John said after his mom cheated 7 years ago, his dad had killed her and was in jail, leaving him alone in the house. Since then, he developed bipolar disorder, often shutting himself, unable to control his emotions. Hearing this made my heart ache deeply. He was so young back then and went through so much. My eyes started to sting for no reason, and my voice softened. I live nearby. I'll be coming over these next few days to take care of you until you're fully healed. Even when you're better, I'll still come over often. I know, thank you. John finished speaking, took a bottle of milk from the fridge, handing it to me. All I have in the house is milk and red wine. You should drink this, it'll help you grow. I protested, I'm already an adult, I can't grow any taller. He looked me up and down, you're too thin, I can feel your bones when I hold you. No way. My face turned red as I glared at him. He chuckled, his voice deep and magnetic, then casually grabbed a bottle of red wine, getting ready to open it. You're not fully healed yet, you can't drink. I stepped forward to snatch the wine from his hand. To my surprise, he lifted it above his head, using his height to easily overpower me. Not only did I fail to get the wine, but I also ended up falling into his arms. He wrapped his arm around my waist and laughed softly in my ear, don't cry, silly. If you care about me, be my girlfriend, okay? And, I want some candy. The breeze carried the sounds of summer night's insects through the window, and he swallowed all the words I had left to say. John's epilogue, I had a dream. In the dream, Emily married Richard and got pregnant. In the end, she died in childbirth. The dream felt so real. I woke up drenched in sweat. Thankfully, I found her sleeping soundly in my arms. I couldn't help but think about the day we first met. It was snowing heavily that day, and there was blood too. After school, when I got home, I saw my dad stab a fruit knife into my mom's chest, blood everywhere. Terrified, I crouched alone by the door and silently called the police. When he was taken away in handcuffs, the hateful and venomous look he gave me was something I could never forget. The house was filled with blood, and I didn't dare go inside. I just stayed crouched by the door. In a very short time, I went from having a family to having no family at all, from having a home to feeling homeless. Tears fell to the ground and quickly turned to ice. My whole body was freezing. I thought, maybe it's okay to freeze to death like this. After all, no one wants me anyway. As it got darker, everyone was heading home. Only I was still crouching there. I didn't know where to go. I hated my own cowardice and weakness. Suddenly, a soft, sweet voice sounded in front of me. Big brother, have some candy when you're sad. It's really sweet. It was a cute girl, her smile forming 2 shallow dimples. Without thinking, I refused, no. Before I could finish, she popped a candy into my mouth. How is it, isn't it sweet? She crouched down to meet my eyes, her gaze filled with stars. I stared at her, dumbfounded, and mumbled, very sweet. That bit of sweetness suppressed all the bitterness in my heart at that moment. Later, I accidentally found out her name was Emily, and she lived in the same neighborhood as me. I became weirdly obsessed, paying more and more attention to her, wanting to know her better. After school, I would purposely walk past her classroom, just to catch a glimpse of her. On the way home, I would quietly follow her, wanting to protect her. She never seemed to notice me. Yet, at the same time, I was relieved she didn't notice me. Almost everyone at school feared me, and I didn't care. What I cared about was if she feared me. I didn't know when I started liking her. By the time I realized it, love had already taken root in my heart. My roommate Daniel suddenly confessed to her, and Emily accepted. The girl I had silently guarded for years got together with the guy next to me. I felt suffocated. The worst part was, Daniel wasn't a good person. I couldn't hold back and tried to persuade her, saying he wasn't worth it. She agreed on the surface, but then Daniel cheated, leaving her to cry alone on the rooftop. My heart ached and bled, not understanding what made Daniel so special. Emily seemed to fear me, which made me both angry and anxious. I wasn't ugly. Was I really that scary? I couldn't stop myself from caring about her. I'd follow her and watch, even if it hurt, seeing them together. Heaven didn't let me down. One day, she caught Daniel cheating. The moment I pulled her into the bathroom, I was so excited I wanted to kiss her, but I was afraid of scaring her. They broke up, and I was ecstatic. Daniel, that scum, realized his mistake and harassed Emily every day, even bruising her hand. I kicked him away and took Emily to the nurse to get some medicine. It rained. I took off my jacket to shield her from the rain. She said she'd wash and return it. She is so cute, how could there be such a cute girl? She touched my Adam's apple. Doesn't she know that boys' Adam's apples shouldn't be touched casually? Could it be that Emily? I couldn't resist and kissed her. Sure enough, it was as sweet as I imagined. I got into a fight with Richard. Honestly, I've disliked him for a long time. Ruining my plans was one thing, but insulting Emily was something I couldn't tolerate. My sickness flared up, and I couldn't control myself, landing a few extra punches. He ended up like that. Really weak. She cried and worried about me, insisting on taking me to the hospital. No one had ever cared about me this much. Emily said she'd take care of me until I was fully healed. Suddenly, getting injured wasn't such a bad thing after all. I told Emily everything about my past, wanting her to fully understand me. Of course, I included the part that I had liked her for a very long time. I finally confessed the feelings I'd kept hidden for so long. Luckily, she accepted. So, everyone, please wish us eternal happiness.